Tony ran away.
Wait a minute. Somebody ran out. Do we scare him away?
You scared Tony Dodden away.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Dan.
All right, we'll give everybody 2 minutes and then we'll jump into this. All right, I think it's probably time to get going here. Hey everyone, this is the MLS meeting at IETF 1.3. Here's some particulars about the meeting. This must be just kind of a resting slide for us. Nick and I are the chairs, just saying hi. Nick, I don't know if you want to pop on and say hello real quick. All righty. Get to the good stuff. This is the IETF Notewell. You've probably hopefully seen this by now since it's Wednesday. This is about the policies and procedures that you need to follow or that you've agreed to follow as part of participating in the IETF meeting. A lot of it has to do with IPR, patent policy kind of stuff. If you know something, say something. Working group process, a bunch of other things there, anti-harassment procedures, code of conduct, et cetera, et cetera. This working group has been is in my mind is doing very well, but I just want to remind everyone of the IETF code of conduct guidelines here that are documented in RFC 7154. Basically, treat everyone with respects, try to speak slowly and limit the use of slang. I feel like that was probably written for me. Dispute ideas by reason to argument, use your best engineering judgment. Find the best solution for the whole of the internet and contribute to the ongoing work of this group and the rest of the IETF. Again, please keep in mind that both the mic on the Jabber and the Meet Echo are on. The other thing, I guess, is to please state your name when you get to the microphone. It makes it easier for the note takers to figure out who said what. Here's our agenda, which is our typical kind of light agenda. We got some administrivia. We're going to go through some things, virtual meeting tips, the virtual blue sheets. That's right. I forgot to say this. If you're in the room, please go ahead and zap the QR code because that takes the place of signing up on the blue sheet, so you don't have to touch the Aki pen and the sheet of paper. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. If you are going to join the queue, and when you're in the room, please the queue tool, and I can manage it because I can see the queue just fine. And basically, we're going to go through the protocol, architecture, and federation drafts. The quick synopsis is we're getting pretty close on the first two, and the third one we're going to try to revive. All right, so the next one, the status. Basically, it's time to review. These are all. It's time for review for the architecture draft. The MLS protocol document's pretty close to being done, and the MLS federation draft, like I said, we're going to revive. This should look pretty familiar. This is the timeline we've had for a slide for a couple of meetings now. Basically, we did a working group last call, we did a feature freeze, and we've done a bunch of versions of the draft to try to get through the GitHub issues and pull requests, and we've done that now. We're on draft 13. We may need a draft 14. Then we'll do a working group last call, and then we kind of, go back out and see what happens. And so we're getting there slowly but surely. The other thing to note is that the way we've structured these documents is that there's no way that the protocol document can really get to the ISG before the architecture document, because with the way we've split things out, that they basically have to progress together. So when we're doing the kind of progressing the documents to the area director, the architecture document is going to have to go with the protocol document, because otherwise it just won't make a lot of sense. All right, so that's pretty much the end of that stuff. Now we're going to jump into Richard's slides, and hopefully he has arrived. There he is. Great. I will stop talking. Richard, do you want to, maybe I'll stop showing this and you grab the ball?
I'd rather drive the slides off the Meet Echo thing. Is it supposed to have it?
Yep, they're loaded, so I will stop. I think if I stop sharing and then you share them, then that works.
I can try.
Yeah, so I think if you hit the thing next to the, yeah.
If I hit that, no. How do I do the slides?
So if you hit the one where it's next to the hand up button, there's a share preloaded slides.
So I hit that to request.
Yep, and then you'll get yep.
There we go. Gotcha.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll stop talking.
All right. So is that showing up for folks?
Yeah, looks good.
It looks good. Cool. We were at draft 12 at the last IETF meeting, as I recall. We have since issued draft 13, and I think we're going to do draft 14 before we go into working group last call. But the delta between 13 and 14 should be pretty small. So this is mainly just a little bit of background on what we did in 13 to kind of queue up the discussion for the issues to try and get those last couple issues and PRs closed out. So diving into this, draft 13, did a bunch of stuff. This was a really active version. Thanks to all the folks that did really good analysis here, and I think a lot of this was due to implementation work, which is exciting. So I'm glad to have more implementation effort here. I'm not going to go through all these, but I'll go through a couple highlights. One thing we did was we did a temporary stoppage on all the technical work to just put the document in a more sensible order. So as you can see with the arrows here, we kind of move things around so that they read a lot better. Like I said, no technical changes to that, but I think the document flows overall a lot better, so it should be more comprehensible when we send it out to the last call and when people pick it up later on. Another, building up more technical from here, one of the changes we made that is a little different if you're coming from a TLS background is we streamlined the vector syntax down a little bit. In TLS, you say, how many bytes of length you want to put at the front of a vector, which constrains how long the vector can be in bytes, which means that if you have two implementations of an interrupt, they have to agree on how many bytes that they're going to put there. So we found when we did some interrupt testing on earlier drafts, this led to a bunch of stupid interrupt bugs. And it was obviously more code to kind of negotiate which sizes you use. So the PR we did, we just made the length field of the vector encoding a variable length integer. So you just put as many bytes of length as you need, and there's some signaling to say how many bytes there are. Stealing a scheme here from Quick, which I think Ecker had proposed putting into CTLS as a compact way of doing vectors there. But yeah, that's kind of make some things a little simpler. Use this V notation to indicate it in the brackets. Let's see what else. Another nice kind of conceptual cleanup we did was to split leaf nodes and key packages. So key packages, you recall, in prior drafts were used both for initializing, pre-publishing my capability so I can be initialized into a group, and for representing my appearance in the group in the tree after I had joined. So what we did, I think this was due to a suggestion from Teofil Valles, we split those kind of two roles. So the leaf, we now have a leaf node struct, which is what represents a member in the group in the tree. And then that leaf node gets wrapped up in a key package, and the key package is used only for pre-publishing information about a client so they can be initiated into a group. And while we were doing that refactor, we did a couple of other things that kind of clean up the structure. So things that were expressed as extensions but always had to be in a key package, we've just promoted those to being fields. We now have two separate signatures on a leaf node and a key package, so that you can verify that the leaf node, verify a leaf node in the tree, as well as verifying the key package is pre-published. They both use the same signature key pair that's in the credential. One of the things that's really nice here is we now have two HPKE public keys. So the key that goes into the tree and is used for TreeCam is different from the key that is used to encrypt the welcome message when you join. So you have kind of that nice crypto separation between the one-time initialization operation and the ongoing TreeCam membership in the group. Finally, the last thing this let us do is, and I haven't really illustrated on the slide here, is that when you have a leaf node that's added by an update or commit, that leaf node gets re-signed and that signature covers the group ID. So your leaf nodes are now bound to the group they're participating in. And by the way, people should feel to step in if there's comments or questions here. I'm just kind of rolling through the high points of draft 13. A nice suggestion from Martin Malarchuk, which gives us a little bit more efficiency here, is that we've updated the algorithms for how we update the tree so that we no longer generate what we call redundant nodes. By redundant, we mean a node that only has one child that's populated. So here I've put nodes that have key pairs attached to them in black, nodes that are blank in white. So all of these nodes that have the arrows next to them in the lower graph, they're all redundant because they had only one child that was populated. So if you, in this case where we have only 3 members in a tree that's bigger because it used to have more members, we no longer need any of those intermediate nodes, and so we save on key generations. This streamlines tree truncation later on. Generally makes things a little bit cleaner. So it's a nice simplification. One thing that took us a few iterations to figure out is this tree hash-based parent hash. This is another thing from Teofil and the INRIA folks. Right now, so parent hash, you'll recall, is how we enable someone who's joining the group to verify that the keys in the tree, who has access to the keys in the tree, that the tree is actually following what we call the tree invariant, that the key is only accessible to the nodes below it. In that parent hash, the parent hash here at V would cover its parent, X, and a representation of its sibling, Z. And so right now, in draft 12, we use the resolution of that sibling because Z is populated here. The resolution is just the node Z. And so the change we made was to use the tree hash of the sibling, which binds in all of the entire subtree under the sibling node, which obviously gets you a tighter binding to the structure of the tree. So you tie in the whole structure of subtree, tie in the things that are in the leaves, like the credentials. So you get a lot more information tied into that parent hash, and so more rigidity in the tree. Fewer ways an attacker can lie. The challenge you get with that is that when you do this at the right edge of the tree, that you're binding the tree structure, but the tree structure at the right edge of the tree can change when you add someone. So in this example, someone has added this node H, this new member H, without sending an update path, which is legal. So everyone just ratcheted, symmetric ratcheted forward. And as a result, H and the blank parent of H got added to the tree. So what that means is when H gets the tree, it's going to need to verify the parent hash at V, and it's going to need to recompute the subtree at Z from before H was added. So it's going to need to, in addition to computing the hashes of the trees that exist today, it needs to compute some historical hashes. And Teofil provided some nice analysis, which we validated in implementation. It shows if you do a super naive algorithm here, you end up with doing n log n hashes, because you're having to recompute some things. If you do a smarter algorithm that has memoization, you can get down to n log n. And so there is some cost to this. It's worse than ON, but not worse by much of a factor. It doesn't get to do much. And so just to validate that cost wasn't too much, I prototyped this out in MLSPP, the C++ based stack that we're using in WebEx, and looked at a few cases. So the thing that really makes this algorithm challenging is unmerged leaves. Because as you can see, the way that tree structure change happens is when you have unmerged leaves. So simulated a few cases here, looking at a full tree with no unmerged leaves, and then synthetically made some trees that were either like half unmerged or 3/4 unmerged to really try and drive out the painful cases for this new algorithm. And then finally tested, a case where we have one, a very sparse tree with one path populated, as if you had someone adding a bunch of folks to the tree and looking at what they had to do to join. Basically, this path case is the best case. In fact, in that case, you're actually doing, your performance looks better than the previous algorithm. Even in the worst case, you're at about a factor of 2 worst case performance. And quantity in absolute terms, you can see the top right graph there. You're still taking on the order of 30 milliseconds to verify the tree when you join, which when you consider these trees at 200 plus members are on the order of megabytes, it's going to take you much longer than that to download the tree at all. So it's not really a salient performance hit to do this parent hash and get the increased binding. So I think that's everything that went into draft 13. So I think the upshot of all this discussion, especially after we close out our last few issues here, is I think we're pretty much ready for working group last call. So with that, I think it's time to ponder draft 14, which is going to incorporate, I think, just the PRs we have outstanding. So Sean, did you want to drive? You want to share GitHub and walk us through that?
I can. I think that you need to relinquish it, or I take it from you. Hold on.
Yes, I have relinquished.
You relinquished it. Now let me see if I can screen share. Do you really want to screen share? Yes, I do. Let me tell you which thing I want to screen share. How about issues? This one. Allow. Is this actually showing? Look at that. It's like I almost know what I'm doing. All right, cool. Where do you want me to go?
So issues wise, I think that one issue is covered by an existing PR, so we can just dive into PRs. And let's see, I think we can go through this in kind of easiness order. So 619, the top one there. I think Teofil approved that this morning. All this is doing is going through and annotating all of our code blocks with what type they are. So there's not really any technical content here. It's just saying that this one's TLS, this one is ASCII art, this one's pseudocode. This allows, if you posit one of the AASVG ones there, Sean, actually, this is, the TLS bits. I came across this because actually I was trying to extract the TLS syntax to help with implementation. The other cute trick you can do here is this AASVG tool that Martin Thompson wrote will actually convert this ladder diagram to an SVG file, so it looks a little prettier in the HTML rendered version. So I think we can probably just merge this because I think it's just editorial, but thought I'd let people know in case there are any comments here.
This is editorial. I think you can just whack the button on this one.
Yeah. All right. Next. This one is slightly technical. So if you want to go to the changes, it's a small change, but it's again trying to go for more key separation. So right, I already said we one of the things I mentioned in the key leaf node key package separation that was nice is we have these 2 HPKE keys now, one for initialization and one that is my long-term key in the tree. there's no requirement right now that those actually be different keys. And so this PR is just adding that requirement in there. So require that they be different. Main drawback here is it's yet another key, so you need more entropy to generate it. But I suppose you could comply with the protocol by deriving them from some common secret as well. So I don't think that the entropy requirement is too terrible. So I'm inclined to merge this unless folks have objections. I will consider that silence to be consent. 617, I think we've got pretty good agreement on this as well on the mailing list. 617, we had some discussion about, I guess the discussion started here about deniability, where there was some ambiguity, or some disagreement in how people read the spec when it came to what keys were used for signatures. And as part of that discussion, it came out that there was ambiguity around these pre-configured senders as well. There wasn't kind of defined interoperably how you would make sure everyone agrees on who's pre-configured. So this PR cleans that up. Basically, it ensures that everyone in the group agrees on who the external senders are. So everyone make sure that everyone will agree on who the valid signers of a message are. So if an external party, a non-member, sends a message into the group, we're guaranteed that everyone in the group will handle that in the same way and either accept it or reject it consistently across the group. So I think we discussed this pretty thoroughly in the list. I think it's got a couple of approvals in GitHub, but I thought we'd bring it up here just in case there are any further comments. Hearing none, we'll consider that merged. Okay, so now that these last two are maybe a bit more controversial. So Rowan proposed this one to indicate the MIME type of the application data that's carried in an application message. My comment here in the PR, so my inclination to just bottom line up front is to close this one with no action. I think this is probably kind of getting a bit premature in terms of signaling inner content types. I think we've got the tools to add this later on. But Rowan, did you want to tee this up?
Yes. Hi. Good morning, everybody. I think MLS is a little bit unique among IETF protocols in not either having a place where you can describe what the next layer is or defining explicitly what the next layer will be. And so this was my attempt to fix this. So I don't think it's premature at all. I think this is basic hygiene, protocol hygiene, and pretty essential. If you're in a group, an MLS group that doesn't require, that is completely heterogeneous, then you could omit this, and the only harm that this would cause would be a single extra byte saying that the length of this is 0 bytes. So first of all, I don't see that there's any great harm. And second of all, it means that you have the ability to have this basic function where you say, okay, the thing that I am sending is this. And if you need something more fancy than a specific MIME type with parameters, then you can send a MIME type that has further descriptions. And just because it's a MIME type doesn't mean that thing needs to be text. You could send a application CBOR, application /VND dot, example vendor, crazy special message format. So those things are all possible.
Yeah, and just to kind of make an analogy for people, I think if folks are coming from a TLS context, I think the right analogy here is something like ALPN, which was added to TLS as an extension. But you could ask the question: is if we were doing TLS over from scratch, would we do ALPN from the start? Eric. Mr. Oscorla, are you intending to speak here? We're not getting audio from you.
I was intending to speak, but Ben didn't. I mean, I think so. Airplane is an interesting analogy. I guess, I tend to think of this as, like MLS is designed to be embedded in other protocols. It is in itself like a complete protocol. And so I would think that the largely job of those protocols to define what the contents of those messages are. And so that's like why I'm a little suspicious of the ALPN analogy. I think it's more, I think one might think of this more like AEAD, in fact, and say that that information ought to be elsewhere. I guess I don't quite understand why, it seems to me that one might wish to have, the different groups are want different things, and different configurations want different things, and I'm not sure why we're going to dictate one type of labeling here. I mean, it certainly seems to me like that if I want to build if I want to build my own messaging system like that uses MLS, like I'm going to want to dictate like how what kind of messages go in it and how those message types are conveyed, and it's not quite any why an MLS solves that problem.
In regards to whether you want to convey the content on the outside, then I think the reason is obvious that that you are leaking information which could otherwise be private if you're putting it on the if you're sending it possibly unencrypted or sending it.
That's not what I'm saying. No. What I'm saying is like that you define the message types, and inside the message bodies can convey the types of the messages that any further type of information, right? So like you could say external, like I say, like if I want to do my new message system, and I say all my messages are MIME and everything inside is MIME, and so you look at the introspect inside the message, right? And so that's the correct locus for defining the message types is inside the message, but the correct locus for defining the format of that is outside.
I think I'm not really understanding what you're getting at here, because a MIME type doesn't need to be, like RFC 2822 style MIME, right? I could send like a vendor specific MIME type. I could send CBOR. I could send protobuf. I could send JSON. I just need a way to say the thing that I'm sending inside has this framing, this structure, whatever, and I can further define. If that's not explicit enough, then that can further describe its own content.
Well, I agree with that. I'm saying that first
Eric, can I try restating? Just
sure.
So I think what Eric is saying is that to deploy MLS, you need a number of specific things defined, like the specific transport that's going to be used, who the authorities are that it depends on. And what I think what Eric is saying is that one of the things that need to be defined in order to use MLS is how you should treat the contents of any given MLS message, right? And one of those ways may well be that the message is a MIME message, and other ways may not want that MIME overhead. And given that MLS is not a specific concrete protocol, but rather an abstract protocol that needs some parameterization before deployment, why not use that? Why not put the how to deal with the application data in that parameterization, right? And a common pattern may well be that the beginning of the application data is a MIME type, but there may be other situations where that's not necessary, and it's not clear what we gain from sticking this in here if we don't actually have a a meaningful way to deal with that, right? Like, what if I have an application where I expect all of the messages to be image PNGs where people are just like, I don't know, texting each other photos or something.
Yep.
And then suddenly you get something that doesn't say image PNG in it. What's supposed to happen to your protocol there?
Right. So it precisely as you described, this helps solve that problem. It is just a tool in helping to solve that problem. But if you define your group so that your group only ever sends PNGs, then you could leave this blank and only incur an extra byte of overhead. If you wanted to explicitly signal that you were sending one of several types of supported content, then you could put in this field before the application data, you could put the type that you happen to be sending among the types which were predefined by your application that they are acceptable types. You would send that type, and then the application data doesn't have to have any MIME texts. It doesn't have to have any headers. It doesn't have to have any extra framing. And that's the value there, is that you have some agility in that if the group allows it, you can send optional types, which could be ignored. You could send, you could, if you have multiple choices, which are all acceptable, you can signal which one you're sending. It provides a lot of flexibility. And so it provides a basic way of signaling what is this content inside, consistent with whatever you have defined as your group policy. I mean, honestly, it just seems like a no-brainer to me.
Jonathan Hoyland, Cloudflare. Just a couple of questions, sort of quick fast style, if you like. If I have this MIME type defined, how is that made available to the application? And secondly, if the application data has in it a MIME type, is there some way to enforce that they agree? And if they don't agree, what is the correct behavior?
So can you give me an example of where you would, the content that you would be sending as your application content, if you wanted to send, for example, a multi-part alternative, then
so
the thing would be
I'm thinking of
multi-part alternative.
I'm thinking of the case where, I don't know, I'm using some bad API and I can't get the MIME type in my upper level application. So I just put it also in the application data just so that it's there. And then somebody says, oh, here's an image PNG. And then at the upper level it says, oh, it's actually an image JPEG. And suddenly it's all broken and bad things are happening for no apparent reason.
I mean,
I feel like if you've got an opaque application data,
things that would break in MLS if you put, I could cite, a dozen different things in MLS that would break if you didn't get the sender information from MLS, if you didn't get the group ID. I mean,
right, but this is a piece of information which is potentially defined in two different places, right? And can be different.
Why would it be defined in two different places? Don't put it inside. Either set the value to 0, to null length before the application data, or set the value before the application data, and don't try to replicate it by putting it somewhere else.
If that was enforced, that would probably be better.
Cullen, go ahead.
Just play. Oh, it looks like I'm on. Okay. So I'm not arguing for or against this one way or another. I'm just sort of saying that, like, this is I think the analogy to LPN is actually really quite good. We could have defined TLS so that when you are using TLS in a given application context of the protocol you're putting over it, the first thing that we do is send a wrapper header as the first bytes in it that tell you what's coming next inside the stream. That'd be one design. It's just such a common thing to do to be able to switch between them. And we already had these other protocols defined and didn't want to define a wrapper protocol for the protocols we're putting over TLS, that you put in an optional field to carry this information, and it really helps with negotiation, upgrade, and stuff. I think that's a fairly clean analogy to what's going on here. Like whether you should do it or not, who cares? I mean, you can either put this identifier of what the data is, you can either put as the first bytes of what you find in the message, or you can put it in the metadata outside of the message. We can go either way, but I think this is I think saying this is very different than TLS. I don't see that at all. Actually, I see it as about the same as TLS. Thanks.
Well, I mean, so I think first of all, I think the TLS analogy is a little odd in that the reason the ALPN is constructed the way it is because the client had to discover what the server's properties were, and it had to be done in the first round trip. So that situation does not apply here. But I mean, we're not actually debating. Well, we're not. I think we generally have this problem in systems where when you have like an opaque transport and you want to demux the types of things under it, what specification specifies like, you know, how that demuxing happens. And what you propose is to define in this specification that you always must have the demuxing of a particular type. And the other option, no, it is. You're saying you always have to have this. You have this value always at the beginning and always must be there. And but it can be zero. Yeah, it can be zero. But like which and this is the case we always come into when we have these things. And what I'm saying is that the description of what form of demuxing, including the zero or not, should be on another layer. And you could have precisely the same wire formats, by the way. Namely, that what I'm saying is that in your MLS specification, in MLS concrete deployment, you say, we use the demuxing specified in this PR. And so the wire format will be precisely identical. And the only question is, where is the information conveyed that of which form of in-message demuxing you're using? And I don't understand why that has to be in MLS, supposed in the concrete instantiations of MLS and other protocols.
So if it's not in MLS, then I think we must define the next thing, that the framing that says what is the thing inside.
Yeah, and that happens in the messaging protocols which make use of MLS. And each one can do a different thing.
So how would it's like, how many layers do you want? Do you? I think it's just.
No, we're talking about precisely as many layers. We're talking about in every case you have MLS and then you have a concrete messaging protocol that makes use of it. And as I said, the wire encoding were precisely identical. And the question is merely who specifies which wire, where the wire encoding is specified. And so what you're saying is every use of MLS must use this prefix MIME type encoding. And what I'm saying is that MLS is embedded in,
Wait, did you say prefix MIME encoding? Because I'm not saying. That's not what I'm saying.
What this prefix MIME type value?
Well, let me make actually a concrete suggestion occurs to me here. So Rowan, you presented this draft on MIME type negotiation in dispatch, which I think is a fine idea. I mean, like if you're doing that extension, you could extend the semantic of that extension so that it also said, put this MIME type in front of the application data. It would be a trivial increment on that extension.
How could you do that? It would be an illegal, it would be like any MLS library that you used would then be using an illegal TLS record format.
Well, no, so what you would say is that the structure of the application data, if you use this extension, is MIME type followed by arbitrary data. So you would be structuring the internals of the application data. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Maybe I can jump in here and try and de something. So I think the point that I've heard several people trying to make is that like our foundational assumption is that we are not specifying a complete interoperable protocol here. Like we're building a framework, and we expect as a precondition for any deployment that you're going to have some sort of integration glue to integrate the thing we produce into your actual complete deployed system. And it's is a very good question to say, okay, well, how is the actual structure and payload interpretation of the payload to be conveyed? Like, thank you for raising this question. It's good to consider where this should happen. But because what we're building is sort of a framework rather than a concrete protocol, it's not immediately clear where the right place is to include this information. We could say, as a precondition of using MLS, you must supply your own form of this content negotiation. We could also say, we will provide this thing that you can use. But because like we don't have people with a wide community of deployed implementations using our stuff, we can't really say, is it going to be more convenient more of the time to have this be part of the integration glue, or is it going to be more convenient more of the time to have it as part of core MLS? And so unless somebody can propose a way to like have a metric to decide which form of the integration is going to be more useful overall, we don't really have a way to answer this question. And in that sort of scenario, we might consider a coin flip.
So I think that's a nice way of framing it, Benjamin. A nice way of framing it. That I think an analogy for me would be imagine if somebody had defined HTTP without having any place to put a content type, and had said, we're going to just leave this up to the application. And the first application that anybody ever used was they put some HTML at the beginning. And imagine that basically every non-HTML usage of HTTP now had this extra cruft at the beginning that was in a format that you otherwise wouldn't have needed to parse. So, you have this extra, like HTML and then some extra thingy inside. Maybe it's only 20 or 30 bytes, but it's always in this ancient format that we don't care about. I think that's precisely the cop-out that we are making right now if we don't do something like this. If we were to say, you must always put an extra TLS record layer formatted thing at the beginning that has some format, I think that might also be fine. But this just seems like such an easy way to say what is inside that is within the context of the group that you negotiated.
So I guess my very quick reply is that, yes, this is an easy way to specify what's inside. It's possible somebody could come up with a different easy way that is a better fit for their application in the future. And if we specify this way now, there's a decent argument that we're locking somebody else out from doing something better in the future. And so I think that the options here are basically do this or something similar to it, or clearly document as a precondition of using MLS that you must supply your own content type identification.
So if you say that you would be locking somebody out of doing it in the future, so I'm countering that. You wouldn't. You could define it in your group. You could include that preamble, and you would set this. You would set the value of the TLS record layer included fields to a null value.
Yeah, I mean, my sense here was that the topic that I think Jonathan was bringing up about, like, if you have two different similar values, how do you enforce consistency between them? And you may not be able to enforce that you always have access to it. But I think I'm also probably running over time here, so maybe I should shut up.
Yeah, sorry. I think I would ask the chairs to. Yeah, there you go, Sean.
So I think what we're going to try to do is actually do a show of hands here.
Sean, I think we lost your
We
audio.
lost Sean. We lost Sean entirely.
Maybe Nick could run this.
think I can access the show of hands tool.
Oh, thank you, Stephen.
Right.
So-
If not, maybe an AD can do it. I don't know.
Sean,
I had a bit of a death there. So the show of hands tools, we're going to do, we talked about this a lot. So this is going to be a merge or not merge kind of questions. Whatever, what's the number of this PR? Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. 605.
So let's do with merge number 605. Let's see if we can do that. So you're going to raise your hands if you think it's a good idea to merge this, and then we'll do another one about not merging it. Okay? Oh no, this is yes or no, right? There's only two options here. So I think when we do this, it'll be, let me start it. It's yes or no. So yeah, raise your hand if you think we should merge it, and do not raise your hand if you don't think we should merge it. We have 81 people in our room. We currently have 15 participants. I'm going to let this go for another minute. Split. All right. Well, when that happens, we take it to the list. I'm going to end the poll. We'll take it to the list. There's one other PR related to protocol that we're also going to take to the list. So I will go ahead and do that. The next draft, I think we're going to switch over here to Benjamin to give us a kind of quick walkthrough of the architecture draft.
Thank you.
Tell me what you want me to do.
So can you please show the issues for the document? Actually, I think it's going to be a very short discussion because pretty much here is editorial, and not much has changed since September. So I think if the protocol document is done, Richard, Conrad, and I did a pass on the architecture document over the last week, and typically Richard made sure that we are aligned between the architecture document and the protocol document, so that we don't have any differences in terms of the way we name the group IDs, things like this. I still need to do a last editorial thing, but the last editorial pass, but generally I think it's pretty close to be done. There are only two real issues left that are also mostly editorial. One is 75, which is track the expected type of deployments. And typically what we have been, what's been asked here is documenting more kind of deployments, meaning like the framework on which we built MLS is mostly the centralized deployment, but we made sure that the protocol can handle anonymous deployments, different kind of delivery system for messages, and some people that typically Brandon actually asked whether we should document more use cases, more kind of architectures in this document. At this point, I don't think we should do that. I think a much better place to do federated deployments, decentralized deployments is in the federation document. Because like the main one, the centralized deployment is the one we refer to for the deployment of the protocol, and so it's an idea. I mean, but I'm not convinced that we should go there. So I would propose that basically we don't do anything. We keep the centralized deployment as the main use case, but I mean to make a point, I mean, the document is written to make explicit that this is not the only deployment, right? Like we can deploy in many ways, and we have like only in the architecture document the minimal assumptions, which is we need some kind of authentication service which will authenticate keys or provide keys for signatures later on in the protocol for authentication. But we explicitly say, oh, by the way, this can be a consensus mechanism, this can be a central server, this can be, so we already have this notion that the centralized deployment is not the only framework. so for this one, I would pretty much say that we should not act and don't do anything, and move that basically issue to the federation document. So, are there any questions about this? Any comments? I think, like, the point is that this document is very clear that there are other deployments than the central one, and it actually already provides intuitions or explicit recommendations over other kind of deployments. But I think writing down a full federated or decentralized architecture is like a separate thing. If we want to instantiate this, like, this is really focused about the minimal things that we need for the protocol to run. So yeah, I would say not touching it is a good is the best way to go here. Any comments?
As chair, I think this is definitely one of these. Please bring PR if you think that this is needed. So
Yeah, exactly.
If Brendan shows up with 50 pages, like, hey, great, we'll review it. I imagine that sometimes, which he might, it's very possible, right? That if it's not forthcoming, that it's okay that we put it in the federated document or
It's been open for a year and a half now, so I don't think.
I have a slightly different take here. I am not sure this belongs in the Federation document, because I think that'll be a little bit more protocol oriented than talking about these deployment considerations. But I don't think it's actually all that useful to talk about these kind of aggregate deployment scenarios either, because the individual properties that are talked about here get covered in the architecture document. So net, I'm okay closing this with no action as well.
I don't know if Brandon's here or if anybody else wants to get to speak to this, but let's go ahead and proceed with that. And if there's a rush to the microphone here. All right, I think we'll go ahead and we can safely close this one out. Or if we do, if I step in minefield, I'll know.
I just did it. Just press it.
So now we're down to number 71.
Yes, and that's also very, very straightforward. I think Chelsea actually wanted to make sure that the phrasing in the architecture document is good enough so that people just assume that because there is an init a key package or an init key that is used, that is added to a group, means that the participant is actively contributing. Meaning that, like, anyone can take, I can take the init key for Joe Biden or whatever and like do an X3DH session with him. It's not going to mean that he wants to talk to me, right? Or that we are in an active discussion. And we have a very slightly similar issue in MLS, the way I see it. So I think she wanted to improve the phrasing to say that only when a participant actually committed to that group in response for this ad, we should consider this as a participation. So I don't even want to go that way and say it is like this person is participating, but I want to make sure that the phrasing doesn't imply that because someone is added to a group, because its PRI key is added to a group, that person accepted to be part of that group. Until there is an actual action from that person, you can't assume anything of its active participation. So I think that's like very straightforward. I am waiting for Chelsea or someone else maybe that wants to do a PR for that one, but it's like really a simple editorial PR to ensure that there is no confusion, right? And at this point, I think the only thing that we really need is review for the architecture draft. Last review is from Richard last week, I think. He made a nice set of editorial comments to that document. We merged them because there was no change that needed to be discussed. This was purely editorial, like changing names for the types that were used in the protocol documents and things like this. So
hold on.
Additional reviews are always welcome. I think we are done.
So on number 71 here,
Mhm.
I think that there is probably a conceptual distinction to make between membership and liveness. Because when someone has been added, even before they commit, they are a member of the group in the sense that they can access the group's secrets, decrypt messages, etc. I agree that they may not have consented, they may not be actively involved in this group, it may be a stale key package or whatever. But they, regardless, whoever has access to the private key has access to the group secrets and is just a member in that sense. So I think we may, if we really want to clarify this one up, we may need to clarify that and make a distinct notion of kind of liveness and consent that's separate from membership. I can take an
Sounds good.
action to think about how to express that.
That would be great. Apart from that, I mean, the last two issues are really like making sure that we have all the citations for the paper that we wanted in the architecture document, and ensures that the affiliations and the contributors are correct. The rest is like, if anyone has like, I don't know how you want to proceed, Sean, with the timeline.
So
but
two things. One, I want to make sure that Robin, you're in the queue.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Is the audio okay?
Yep.
yes.
Good. Yeah, I wanted to pick up on the point that Richard alluded to here, because the alarm bell that set off in my mind was, are we opening the door there for the kind of proposal that was put forward in the UK, the so-called ghost protocol or silent listener? What I don't want to see, I think, in a spec like this is a staged view of someone being a member of the group that would make it possible for someone to participate in the key exchange, but for some reason, because they're not at that point considered to be a full participant of the group, for other people in the group not to be notified that that person has undertaken the key exchange. I think that would be bad and dangerous.
So we don't have that. Definitely, we don't allow that, because the protocol actually enforces that everyone sees the same thing. You can't hide, basically. Like nobody can add a participant. I mean, that would not be visible by other members. I mean, let's be clear. Any application can do that, right? Like any application can leak that, or any programs that forwards the message to so any malicious participant can do that, but like forwarding messages, I mean, but they cannot add people that won't be actual members of the group. What I mean by that is that the cryptographic state will include the key from someone that has been added, but the application must know that this person hasn't sent a message to that group. Is what I said clear? I mean, the fact is that cryptographically you can't hide a participant. You can't do like the UK backdoor thing.
Okay, yeah, it's reassuring, and I think it suggests that Chelsea's comment is really about clarity of the text rather than safeness of the protocol. Thank you.
Definitely.
Yes.
All right. So what I'm going to do is, Benjamin, to answer your question, I'm going to ask for volunteers. Is there anybody that wants to go on the record for saying that they're willing to review this soon? Because otherwise, we are actually going to do a working group last call. And there, I would love to have some people also volunteer on the record to have a review.
So reviews are very helpful, right, and very necessary. So
yeah, they are. It's hard for me to tell Benjamin, hey, make some changes. He's like, nobody's asked for any. So I do think that as we progress this into a working group last call, that the reviewers will come out of the woodwork, and that certainly when we progress this to the area director, we'll probably get some reviews. I don't know. I assume we're probably going to get Paul. I think we'll get some reviews, but I know that when we leave the working group, we're going to get comments from people. So, all right, cool. I didn't get any people that volunteered, but we'll I think we're going to get some by force of nature here. So the last little bit here is on federation. So Raphael, if you want to jump in.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to try and go really fast on that one. So yeah, a really long time ago, the working group created a document called Federation because at the time, a number of parties had expressed some interest in that. We haven't really been working on it because we've been focusing on the protocol itself and the delivery service and the authentication service. So it's become quite stale at this point. But in the meantime, the protocol has matured and we are relatively close to the working group last call now. We have several implementations. We even have one deployment. So that means that we're now in a better position to talk about federation with all the experience we have now. So the idea here is to see if we can resurrect the federation document. The old version is still around. You can use that as a starting point and modernize it. Specifically, Rowan has proposed to make some initial contributions to that. As a reminder, maybe this document is a non-normative document, meaning it's not intended to specify a full wire format to do federation. It's probably more likely going to be about the different components and how they can interact. So yeah, I think that's actually it. So looking forward for some contributions and discussion.
Yeah, so the only thing I want to add for those process wonks that might be in the room or on the in the thing here is that we've already adopted this draft and there's a repo for it that we're going to let the editors do their thing. If they want to rewrite the document or whatever, they're just going to go ahead and do that. We're not going to do the whole individual readopt process delay. We're just going to set them free basically. And so I thank you for reinvigorating that because it's one of the things that's on our to-do list. So thanks. And thanks everybody for showing up. It's 9:01. Thanks for staying that extra minute. Go get some libations before the plenary or the OHI or wherever else you're going to go next. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, bye.
Expect some mail to the list. Ciao. Thanks again, Stephen and Robin.
No problem.
About how you do the encryption for your draft. And I actually have a different idea of how you do it. If you see him around, tell him let's hear about another topic. Well, he'll be at dinner tomorrow.